Vice President Harris has conceded the race for president to Donald Trump. She spoke just moments ago. Stephen Holt joins us now with what she had to say and what happens now. Stephen.
Yeah, Marian, the vice president speaking at Howard University, her alma mater, a chance to thank her family, her running mate, and her campaign supporters today. The tone, understandably, one of disappointment, but also it was a call to action.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people. A fight for the ideals at the heart of our nation, the ideals that reflect America at our best. That is a fight I will never give up.
Of course, some recurring themes, the peaceful transition of power. Vice President Harris called President-elect Trump to congratulate him on his victory and talked about the need for that peaceful transfer of power. A Trump campaign spokesman says he acknowledged her strength and tenacity on the campaign and that both leaders agreed on the importance of unifying the country at this time.
Trump did not make mention of Vice President Harris in his speech early this morning. We do want to show you how Illinois voted in the presidential election. Here are the numbers. Kamala Harris secured the state's 19 electoral college votes by a nearly 8% margin. More than 53% of people you see of Illinois voters cast their ballots for the Harris-Walz Democratic ticket. Just over 45% voted for the Republican opponents, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And while Harris won, you can see there, the big takeaway is that she had the smallest margin of victory here in the state since Bill Clinton in 1992. And there are lots of lessons here for both parties to take away.
Political reporter Marianne Ahern is here now. After speaking to sources, what does the day after look like to them and to you as a political reporter?
Marian and Alex, we have heard that the post-election before, but despite what all the polls showed us, this race was to be close. That just was not the case. So again, the polls got it wrong. Illinois, one of those rare blue states, but today it's a little lighter shade of blue than solid.
Included in Donald Trump's winning coalition, students on college campuses, especially young men. Can Democrats win them back? Political strategist Jordan Abadea.
I think we have a whole swath of young men who are coming up listening to a different media ecosystem than their young women counterparts are.
House Republican leader Tony McCombie on what the Democrats should have done.
You should have let the voters choose who was the candidate, and that didn't happen.
Flying a Trump flag at Chicago City Council today, Alderman Nick Sposato agrees.
How could real Democrats stand for what they did by the bait and switch, whether it was Biden and then they pull him out and put her in there when she wasn't elected? She was basically selected.
Sposato's ward among 7 Chicago wards where Donald Trump received more than 40% of the vote. Political science professor Stephen Maynard Caliendo.
There's a question of whether or not she should have stayed with the joy message rather than going on the attack against President Trump. And on the flip side, there's a question of why did she give up on that attack message in the last 48 hours.
Regionally, Trump won 3 Illinois counties close to Chicago: LaSalle, McHenry, and Kankakee.
Here in Illinois, voters are exhausted over decades of one-party control. People are voting with their pocketbook.
And that pocketbook concern hits home with male Latino voters who increased by more than 15% for Trump from 2020 in national exit polls.
I think Trump had the benefit of the economy being the issue that people cared about, particularly with men who feel like in the last 10, 15, 20 years, they've lost the ability to be the sole providers for their families. They've lost the ability to have manufacturing jobs.
There is still so much to look at from this election as far as why choices were made, but clearly it will drive the next election as well. Democrats will likely move more to the center as they prepare for the next big contest.
A lot of analysis left to go over all these, who voted where.
It's going to be going on for weeks, I think.
It will.
Marianne, thank you.
Thank you.
Marianne.
The presidential election, of course, is now over, but election-related stress can linger.
It certainly can, and that can be the case no matter who you voted for. Regina Waldrop is here now with some tips on coping with post-election emotions. Regina?
Marian and Alex, here's one thing we could all agree on. Elections are stressful. But the doctor I talked with today says people need an off-ramp from politics, especially with the holidays quickly approaching. It's the day after the presidential election. Some voters filled with pride and optimism.
No stress. Great day. It feels like freedom outside. The sky's not falling. Another day, another dollar.
For others who didn't get the outcome they wanted, it's a day of disappointment.
There's nothing to talk about. It is what it is.
I feel all right. Could be a little bit better.
I didn't sleep at all. Like, not a single hour.
This election had voters of both parties stressed out. According to the American Psychological Association, nearly 70% of Americans said the 2024 presidential election was a significant source of stress in their lives.
I mean, it's your country, and it's people you care about, so there's always a lot at stake.
Whether you're celebrating or feeling anxious, it's okay to put politics on pause and do some self-care, says Dr. Michael Zipra with Northwestern University.
Really, it's good to take a break from media and social media, because there's going to be a lot of content that is just going to stir people up.
And then shortly after the election, you have the holidays coming. And Dr. Zipra says one thing you can do is to make an agreement with family and friends to keep politics off the table.
I know it's not always easy, but often that's the best approach. And so you and your family may want to have some sort of agreement beforehand.
Some other ways to manage post-election stress: exercise, take a walk outside, talk to people who support you, get enough sleep, don't consume lots of caffeine or alcohol, and take a break from social media.
I think self-care in a very general sense is very important.
So back to talking politics at Thanksgiving or Christmas. All the people I talked with today said they had already had that discussion with their family and friends. No politics, just some good food and good company. Mary.
That's some great advice.
Yep.
Keep it off the table. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Regina. For the second time in 8 years, the female candidate did not win the presidency. So what's keeping the U.S. from electing a woman to the highest office?
There is evidence to suggest there is gender bias at play here. NBC5's Kate Chappell spoke with experts, and she's joining us here in studio with a closer look at this issue. Kate?
Alex, Marianne, I spoke to several political strategists, professors, and politicians today about this gender gap and how with so much momentum early on, again, a woman did not win the presidency, and why that may be.
Social media is flooded with posts like these. Disappointment that for the second time in 8 years, a woman will not be president in the United States.
I am surprised by the results in that every state that I went to, the Democratic campaigns on the ground were more organized, more active, and more coordinated than I had ever seen.
Democratic strategist Kitty Kurth traveled with the Harris-Walz campaign around the country.
I find it disappointing, but not shocking. I think American people don't want to vote for women.
It's a sentiment shared by political professors and strategists who say gender did play a role in the election.
Harris gets tied to the incumbent, gets tied to the economy. Trump wins the election. But at the same time, I think that the role of gender can't be denied as one of the most crucial issues in determining who won.
Once again, we'll find that her gender mattered, that there is a group of people who did not vote for her simply because she was a woman. And I think just as salient simply because she's a Black woman.
According to early NBC exit polling, despite the fact more women voted for Kamala Harris than Donald Trump, she underperformed with women compared to Joe Biden in 2020.
Well, every other country seems to be able to look at the candidate on policy alone and not personality. We're still stuck on personality, and that's one of the reasons Donald Trump won yesterday, is because it's a cult of personality.
Consultant Delmarie Cobb points to Harris's strong fundraising and enthusiasm in her short campaign, but says stereotypes still exist and continue to hold women back from positions of power.
A woman cannot be strong. A woman cannot be a leader. A woman cannot think for herself. A woman is too emotional. A woman will be hysterical.
Kathy Salvi, the chair of the Illinois Republican Party, says she believes a woman will someday hold the top office and acknowledges Trump did not always message well with women, but credits his win to the issues, not his gender.
It's got to be the woman with the right policies. This is not a gender issue. This is a policies that work for America. And this election shows that the Republican policies on economy, on security, on border security, on international policy, that's what the voters want.
Now, according to those same NBC exit polls, most Harris voters rated democracy as their top issue. Trump voters said the economy. Abortion ranked third, which was expected to be a top issue driving women to the polls. The strategist I spoke with said the turnout didn't really match expectations.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were a little bit surprised.
Very much so.
All right, thanks so much, Kate.
Yeah.
Today, Vice President Kamala Harris ended her bid for the presidency, conceding the election to President-elect Donald Trump. Harris thanked her supporters and urged them to keep fighting for the causes that they believe in.
NBC5's Alex Maragos is here with the vice president's message after a truly hard-fought campaign.
Yeah, and we've been waiting to hear what she might say since last night, Stephen and Allison. Harris today called Trump earlier on today to congratulate him on that victory. The two also talked about the need for a peaceful transfer of power. And this afternoon, in a speech at Howard University just a couple of hours ago, she thanked her family and her campaign volunteers, and she encouraged her supporters not to give up on their cause.
The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up and as long as we keep fighting. Do not despair. This is not a time to throw up our hands. This is a time to roll up our sleeves. This is a time to organize, to mobilize, and to stay engaged for the sake of freedom and justice and the future that we all know we can build together.
President Biden also called the president-elect today and congratulated him. The president plans to talk about the election publicly tomorrow. Allison and Stephen.
For months, nonpartisan groups have pushed for Latinos to get out and vote. Today, some new numbers are providing some insight into the turnout among Latino voters and who they voted for. NBC5's V. Nguyen joining us now with a closer look at some of these numbers. V?
Stephen, these numbers are coming from an NBC News exit poll. It was conducted across the country in 10 key states, including Michigan and Wisconsin. The data shows President-elect Donald Trump grew his support among Latino voters compared to 4 years ago.
Reactions coming in today from nonpartisan groups after seeing the Latino turnout for Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump.
What we certainly were seeing preliminarily was that this was the largest number of eligible Latino voters ever in American history. What we were seeing before the election is that 1 in 4 Latinos were going to vote for the first time.
Sylvia Puente is the president and CEO of the Latino Policy Forum and says in the coming days they're going to begin the process of analyzing trends in the Midwest and nationally.
I think, again, the Latino trends are the national trends, and that we know across the nation more men in general voted for the president-elect than did women.
NBC News exit polls found Trump received 45% of the Latino vote compared to 53% for Harris. His support among Latinos grew by 13% compared to 4 years ago.
I think what it means is that Latino voters, we know, are not monolithic, that there's a lot of diversity within the Latino community, and Latino voters, like many of whom are working class, like a lot of other American voters, voted their pocketbook.
The Hispanic Federation conducted its own poll in October and found Latinos in the battleground states cared about issues that included the economy, cost of living, inflation, and housing costs.
We know that Latinos, really voted for, whether it was Donald Trump or Vice President Harris, for a candidate that they felt would address their needs and the issues they thought were important.
While this presidential election may signal a swing in the Latino vote, Puente is appreciative with the turnout among Latino voters to do their civic duty regardless of who they voted for.
The number of registered and eligible Latino voters is the largest number it's ever been in American history. The question now is we've got to drill down to see to what extent they came out to vote.
As for the president-elect, this could possibly be the strongest GOP performance among Latinos for a presidential race since 2004. Allison?
Thanks so much, V. Now that Donald Trump is the president-elect, what happens to his 4 criminal cases? NBC5 investigates Bennett Haberly with the story.
First, there are 2 federal criminal cases against Trump, one for allegedly taking official documents and one related to January 6th, alleging that he tried to overturn the 2020 election. Trump has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Both cases, though, are essentially dead, according to Steve Schwinn, a professor of law at the University of Illinois at Chicago and John Marshall Law School.
So there is a longstanding policy on the part of the Department of Justice that says that they won't prosecute a sitting president. And the idea behind this is that by prosecuting a sitting president, you effectively incapacitate the head of an entire branch of government.
Schwinn's opinion falls in line with what 2 sources told NBC News today, that the DOJ is evaluating how to wind down those 2 cases before Trump takes office. But there's also the New York State criminal case, where Trump was found guilty this summer of 34 felony counts of falsifying records to cover up payments to a porn star. The judge is due to sentence Trump later this month. But will that happen?
I think that's highly unlikely. I think what's more likely is that he would delay sentencing until after Trump's second term. Even that, I'm not sure about how likely that is. I suspect that the New York courts will take the same position that the Justice Department has taken and just dismiss the entire case.
Finally, there's the state case in Georgia, where Trump and others are accused of conspiring to overturn the 2020 presidential election results. Trump has pleaded not guilty, and an appeals court is now deciding whether to disqualify the prosecutor in that case. They won't issue that decision until next year, after Trump takes office.
And so, yeah, we really are in uncharted territory. There's a lot of stuff we don't know just because we haven't been here before as a country.
Even 2 multi-million-dollar civil judgments against Trump are now up in the air as he appeals both his verdict of civil fraud involving his company and a defamation verdict after he was found civilly liable for sexual abuse. Bennett Haberly, NBC5 investigates.
Thank you, Bennett.